Israel's ambassador to the United States, Ron Dermer. Mr. Ambassador, thanks for being here. This is obviously a tragedy, one that already has Israeli officials calling for retribution. Deputy Defense Minister Danny Danon posting on his Facebook under a picture of the three boys, "The tragic end of the boys must be the end of Hamas." Could we see a full-scale war here against Hamas?
Well, we have to understand what Hamas is. Hamas is a terror organization. It's committed to Israel's destruction. They have fired thousands of rockets at our cities. They've dispatched dozens, scores of suicide bombers at our civilians, and they are responsible for the murder of these three boys.
How do you know? I have not heard that they've taken credit
Members
for
of Hamas, it doesn't matter whether they took credit or they didn't take credit. In fact, the head of Hamas celebrated the kidnapping today and called for more kidnappings. We know that members of Hamas in the Hebron area, they're the ones who are responsible. And my prime minister was very clear, Hamas is responsible and Hamas will pay a very heavy price. That's the decisions that they're making right now in Jerusalem, because as we speak here, they are having a cabinet meeting right now in Jerusalem.
How do you make sure that it's only Hamas that pays the price and not innocent Palestinians who happen to live in the same area?
Well, we do everything we can in order to not harm Palestinian civilians. The problem we face with Hamas is Hamas both fires rockets at our civilians and hides behind civilians. They use civilians as human shields. So it makes it very difficult for Israel to conduct these anti-terror activities, but we do it. And I think we do it in a way that maybe no other country in the world does. We go out of our way to not harm Palestinian civilians. That's the difference between us and the terrorists. They deliberately kill our civilians. We do everything to keep their civilians out of harm's way. And one other thing that I want to say. It's not just Hamas that's a problem. You said in the opening of your segment that it's not enough for Israel that President Abbas, the Palestinian leader, has condemned this act. We appreciate very much that he's condemned this kidnapping. But at the same time, he actually has a government with the kidnappers. It's one thing for him to condemn terrorism. It's another thing for him to sit in a government with a bunch of terrorists. And that's why we call on the international community to put pressure on President Abbas and to tell him he has to choose peace with Israel or a pact with Hamas. He can't have both.
I want to read a comment from Hamas in response to what Prime Minister Netanyahu said. Obviously, Prime Minister Netanyahu fingered Hamas and said they were responsible for the kidnappings, vowed action. Hamas had put out the statement saying his threats do not scare Hamas. If he is willing to start a war in Gaza, then the gates of hell will be open to him. What is the Israeli government going to do next? Should we expect jets to bomb areas where you believe Hamas fighters to be?
Well, we're just going to have to wait and see, but I can tell you one thing, Jake, for sure. We have a very responsible and serious leadership in Jerusalem, and they will make the decisions they have to make in order to send a very strong message to Hamas that this action is unacceptable and to take the action that they deem necessary in order to protect and to defend our population. Your government would do the same thing. Any government would do the same thing.